Police near Atlanta have identified a suspect in a terrifying hit and run that left a 9-year-old girl in the hospital. Now, they haven't made an arrest, but this is a big break in the case that we've been following so closely. LaDerihanna Holmes is doing better. There you see a picture of her. Family says she's now in stable condition. Police are still looking for the guy to make an actual identification here. As you see that video, it's just unbelievable. Again, that's a 9-year-old little girl. She's playing in the front yard. It doesn't get any more innocent than that before the car crashes into her, ultimately into the house. Now, when this person is caught, potentially charged with hit and run, a stop sign violation, serious injury by the vehicle, among others, earlier, mom Charlotte Bolton talked about hearing the crash.
I screamed my baby because I knew she was on the porch. I ran down. A lady had got my baby from between the car and my house and placed her and her friend on the ground, and she was lifeless. I was screaming. My 12-year-old son and another gentleman start doing CPR on her. And that's when I start working on her. I felt a heartbeat.
Now, LaDerihanna has a fractured skull, broken pelvis, and she'll have to learn how to walk all over again. Our thoughts are with this brave young girl, again, as we see her recovering in a hospital bed. Bianchi joins us now, former prosecutor and host of Law and Crime Network. So police have identified a suspect. No arrests have been made. So they had plenty to go on, don't you think, Bob, when you talk about pretty good surveillance video and any kind of prints and evidence inside that vehicle?
Yeah, as I was saying before, Mike, it was a no-brainer they were going to eventually get this guy. It's done in broad daylight. They've got excellent videos, tape that they're going to be able to put out to the public to identify a person. The vehicle was left behind, which is going to leave copious amounts of DNA and fingerprint evidence at least, if not something more than that. Not to mention that they're going to have cameras. I'm sure that they went around and surveilled the entire neighborhood for all sorts of cameras that may have captured the travel of this vehicle. So it sounds like they've already identified a suspect, and they're clearly going to make it an arrest in this case, Mike, in my mind.
Got it. Again, suspect identified. No arrest has been made as of yet. So we want to note here, 2 people in the car. And let's start with the driver. It's not bad enough. They run the light there, the stop sign, and crash into this poor little 9-year-old girl. Then they take off. How much worse is it when you throw the hit and run in there?
Well, it's a lot worse, Mike. You know, as a prosecutor, you're looking at conduct. Now, we're being told that these are probably teenagers. And we can't underscore the point enough, I can tell you as a prosecutor for many years. It's a tragedy when something like this happens, but it's a tragedy to these kids that are getting in the car, driving recklessly. They may not have intended anything bad to happen, but bad consequences are going to flow. To your question, as a prosecutor, when I look at this, if it was a mere accident, it's one thing. But when you leave the scene of an accident in that state where there is also a duty under the law to render aid, they got out, saw that the victim was laying there, and took off. And they can face anywhere up to 5 more years, or at least the driver, 5 more years in state prison for leaving the scene of that accident. Prosecutors and police take leaving the scene very seriously, and you can be assured that this will not be favorable to the defendant in the manner in which the prosecutor determines to resolve this case.
Got it. What's the responsibility of the passenger?
That's a good question, Mike. You know, I'm not seeing any right now. You know, the passenger's not driving the vehicle. Unless the state, the prosecution, can tie in that somehow he was involved in the recklessness of this action, he is not responsible under the laws for the actual operation and/or not leaving the scene of an accident, if you will. So unless there's something more here, I don't really see any kind of heavy consequences, if any consequences at all, to the passenger.
Got it. Hey, Bob, always good seeing you. Thanks again so much. And again, the breaking news is a suspect identified as this poor 9-year-old girl is hit and recovering in a hospital bed. Bob, thanks again. Appreciate it.